Regardless of which video game genres you enjoy playing, sooner or later, your hand-eye coordination is eventually going to be put to the test. Whether you're platforming or shooting, games can often require immense skill and lightning-fast reflexes. And that's part of the fun. There's a certain hypnotic state that can be achieved when you find your groove. You're jumping, you're shooting, you're jumping, you're whipping, you're swinging, you're whipping, you're swinging, you're whip. Sometimes, though, it's nice to take a step back and just go for a walk. I'm not exactly sure where the term walking simulator originated, but it's used to describe a subgenre of video game that's predicated upon slowly maneuvering your way through an environment, typically in first person. Walking sims are traditionally light on mechanics such as combat or character progression, opting instead to place the emphasis on narrative and discovery. Unfortunately, the genre has been met with a lot of cynicism, with some people contesting that such experiences aren't even really games. I mean, the name itself sounds pejorative, implying that all you do is walk around. While there is some truth to that, there's typically more depth than the dissenters assume. The hate probably just comes from a vocal minority, but regardless, I wanted to take a few minutes to defend a genre that often gets unfairly written off and highlight a few of my favorite walking simulators. The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, developed by the Astronauts, is the first walking sim that I can remember playing. It stands in my mind as the best game to explain the genre in a nutshell. You play as Paul Prospero, a paranormal investigator brought to Wisconsin by a letter written by one Ethan Carter. Ethan turns out to be a missing 12-year-old, so Paul sets out to solve the mystery and determine what's happened to Ethan. The first thing I noticed when capturing footage of this game is just how good it still looks. Ethan Carter is almost exactly 10 years old as of this video's creation, but it really doesn't look it. There's something about the game's world that just immediately compels you to begin exploring. I think it may be that the environment feels like a real place, devoid of loading screens or contrived level design. The game presents an illusion of being more open-ended than it actually is. That being said, there are often multiple ways to reach your end goal or stretches that open into a wider explorable space. There's a lot of ground to cover, and thankfully, you can turn the game into a jogging simulator if you want to move with a little more urgency. Perhaps more noteworthy than the structure of the game's world, though, is how little The Vanishing of Ethan Carter guides you through it. From the get-go, the game proclaims that it doesn't hold your hand, and Ethan Carter honors that promise. After a brief opening cutscene, you're left to your own devices, which may be intimidating to some, but I find such liberation to be refreshing. If you're looking for an intriguing introduction to walking simulators, look no further than The Vanishing of Ethan Carter. If you're looking for even more freedom, seek no further than Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, developed by the Chinese Room. Released just about a year after Ethan Carter, this game sets you off in a cozy English town to figure out where everybody went. As you explore, you'll frequently encounter glowing orbs that fly around to various locations on the map. Following their trail will present you with small vignettes of conversations. These exchanges shed more light on the strange happenings of this newly silent village. Rapture expands upon the no hand-holding ideology of Ethan Carter. Not only does Rapture refrain from providing waypoints or objectives, but it also tosses the player into a proper open world. From the beginning of the game, you're pretty much free to go wherever you want. The orbs offer some guidance, but if you feel like wandering off into the woods with no real objective, nobody's gonna stop you. Unlike Ethan Carter, Rapture doesn't provide a way to speed your character up beyond a literal walk, at least not one that I found, which can be frustrating given the size of the game's explorable space. Replaying some of Everybody's Gone to the Rapture in particular reminded me that you really need to be in the proper headspace to enjoy one of these games. Sometimes you're just not in the mood to stroll through a quaint pub. As I've made clear, I really enjoy these types of games, but even I have days where slowly wandering is the last thing I want to do. You've got to be in the right mood, and I imagine that some people may have written the genre off because they tried it when they were more in the headspace of blowing something up or grinding for experience points. And there are certainly walking sims that possess traditional elements of games. Take the Unfinished Swan, developed by Giant Sparrow. Unlike the other titles we've discussed so far, the Unfinished Swan adopts a highly stylized look that immediately sets it apart. In fact, initially, the game appears to be nothing but solid white. The game's first level requires you to hurl orbs of black paint at the space around you in order to illustrate the actual confines of the environment. This is still one of my favorite game mechanics ever. There's something profoundly childlike about making an unrestricted mess. As fun as that mechanic is, the Unfinished Swan smartly realizes that it's not enough to carry an entire game. New ideas are steadily introduced throughout the 4 to 6 hour journey, which I won't spoil here, but rest assured that the team at Giant Sparrow has no shortage of creativity. They're also behind the terrific What Remains of Edith Finch, which I've already gushed about in another video. The Unfinished Swan, though, is just bursting with charm and innovation. I haven't played anything else quite like it, and it earns my highest recommendation.
Dear Katie, so much has changed, even just since you've been away. We moved into this house. I'm in a new school, and my big sister being gone for a year doesn't make it any easier.
It's been almost a decade since I played through Gone Home. Developed by the Fulbright Company, this game is one of the earliest examples of the genre. While the games we've already discussed find you exploring forests and towns, Gone Home finds you confined to a single house. You play as Katie Greenbrier, a 21-year-old who returns home from an overseas trip to find that you're the only one there. The family has just recently moved in, so many of their possessions are still in boxes. As you explore the house, you stumble onto a number of different notes written by your younger sister Samantha that fill in the blanks of all that's happened since you left. Being limited to exploring a single house may sound, well, limiting, but the house itself is appropriately dense. You can stumble upon countless readable documents that shed more light on Katie's family. So too can you pick up many of the house's items, which don't really do anything, but contribute to the sense that this is a real place. Many doors and drawers are initially inaccessible too, forcing you to find the right codes and keys to unearth the entire mystery.
Lonnie brought her hair dye over today. She said, I need to fix these roots. Think you could help? Dyeing hair is weirdly intimate.
I captured footage of all of these games for this video, and replaying a bit of Gone Home struck me more than any of the others. There's something immediately transfixing about it. Maybe it's the grounded nature of exploring a simple house, a rare video game scenario. Or maybe it's the nature of the narrative, a story that's immediately relatable and strangely evocative, at least for me. It certainly looks dated by today's standards, but if you enjoy this kind of game and you haven't played Gone Home, I highly recommend doing so. I hope anyone unfamiliar with walking sims can start to see the variety hidden within the genre. Yes, each of these games involves a lot of walking, but the scenarios and environments vary widely, even into 2024. Nobody Wants to Die just released about a month ago and was the game that got me thinking about making this video. Set 300 years in the future, the game follows an alcoholic detective as he attempts to solve a murder case involving some high-ranking political figures. Exploring a futuristic New York City is fascinating. The world building of Nobody Wants to Die is the strongest element of the game. Beyond simple exploration though, you're able to unpack crime scenes using time manipulation and place together clues back at your apartment, demonstrating that games of this ilk can incorporate additional mechanics. It's certainly a flawed experience, but memorable and worth a playthrough if it looks like something you'd enjoy. I don't expect it to make my top 10 games of 2024, but I wanted to make sure I gave it a shout out somehow on the channel. I've tried to think of a less cynical sounding name for walking simulators, but at this point, the name has grown ubiquitous enough that it's hard to shake it. Just like Souls-likes or boomer shooters, people know what it means, so I suppose it's gonna stick. Like any genre, it's easy to look at and tell whether or not it's something you'd actually enjoy, but if you've written off walking sims, I dare you to just try one of the games I've mentioned here. If you hate it, you hate it, but at least you'll have tried something new. I've got plenty of genre blind spots with which I'd like to experiment. Maybe this could be one for you. Through all the chaos and carnage that video games deliver, sometimes the best thing to do is just take a walk.